Hey American Lit, this is the March 30 lesson where we're going to be working on capturing the central ideas and key details from the America Transformed article that you're to read today to give you some background to our new unit on the realist genre of literature in American Lit. So just to get us started real quick here, as a quick refresher, to get to the online textbook, you're going to go into your Google Classroom, right? So I'm using Gold 1 here, Gold 4. You would go to Gold 4, but go to your Google Classroom, go under Classwork, and then I've put this towards the top for you guys. You should have that sign-on link for the online textbook. Once you're in there, you're going to go to the student version, okay? Make sure you go to that student version of the text, and then I think the quickest way for you guys to get there is just when you see that box at the top, type in 329, which is the start page, and it should take you right here. So you should be seeing this. That is the text. It's 2 pages, 329, 330. And then the other thing that you're going to want to open up, you can also you can print it out if you wanted to. I think the ideal way to do this is to actually type this out sort of as I'm doing in a split screen. There should be this template for central ideas and details, and this will basically be a good resource for you as you're taking the quiz. So our mini lesson today, we're going to talk about, I'm going to get you guys started with completing this so that you can capture those central ideas and key details. So I'm going to read this out loud. We're going to get started with this, and I'll take down those details as we go. Just to get us started, though, there are a couple things we can do right away before we even get started. So first thing you can do, get your name in here. I'm gonna use Gold 1 as an example. So this is for you guys. This is not me. This is going to be you. Your name, Gold 1, and then down for bibliographical information. So that's just the information telling me what this text is, where it's coming from. So we know that the title of our article here, it's really big and at the top, right? America Transformed. All right, we're gonna get that down. The publication title, that's the name of the anthology or the larger work that this is contained in. So that is actually the name of our textbook, which is Collections 11, and the author of that. So this is an anthology, and as with most anthologies, we have a series of editors, and sort of at the top of what's called the masthead is Kylene Beers. So et al. Just means the rest of the authors, and there's a whole list of them. I don't care about those. Just Kylene Beers is fine to start. So that's our bibliographical information, and with that we can actually jump down here to the central ideas and details and start getting these down. You should be shooting for each one of these Roman numerals, you should be shooting for a central idea from each paragraph, and then for each of the details that follow, you should be shooting for at least 2 specific details that you're seeing. The only exception to this is this very first paragraph, which is actually just kind of a summary of the entire text. So we're actually not going to get a central detail or a central idea from this one, but we are going to read it. So let's get started. At the end of the 19th century, America struggled with a paradox. It was a nation of almost unlimited possibilities and wealth, but it was marked by great poverty and pain for many of its citizens. Reflecting this tension, a new literary movement known as realism emerged, which expressed a view of life that was unsentimental, bitterly ironic, and often harsh or ugly. All right, so we're going to read, they're going to dig into each of those ideas a little bit more as we go. So this is the first paragraph that we're going to want to capture some central ideas and details from. So the way that I'm doing this, as I'm trying to get the central idea, the way that I go about it, I really want to get a sense of the whole paragraph before I go back and look at and try to identify that central idea. So that's what I'm going to do first here. Engines of social change. In the 2 decades after the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, the rail system brought thousands of settlers to the West. The railroad industry also became an engine for industrial growth as new manufacturing centers grew up around railroad hubs in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, and Chicago. New technologies and industrial modernization brought prosperity to large parts of the nation. All right, so as I'm looking at this whole paragraph, and we talked a lot about central ideas when we were looking at those ACT passages, sort of towards the end of Q3, and also earlier in Q3 as well. One of the ways that we can find that central idea is by looking for keywords. And one word that seems to be recurring a lot, seems to be really important here, that I'm noticing is railroad, right? Railroad hubs. This is coming up again and again. So that is going to be a part of my central idea. Okay, so what about it? I'm thinking, okay, that's the what. What is the verb there? What is it? How is the railroad important? Well, we're seeing, this heading, right, is kind of cluing us in too, right? If it's bolded like that, that gives us a big clue. Engines of social change, all right? So change seems to be something that I'm noticing coming up a lot here too, right? New manufacturing centers are building up, and there's a lot of modernization, right? So, central idea one, think of fair, and yours can look a little different, that's okay, but it should definitely have railroad and something having to do with change. So I would write this as the railroad brought massive changes. Spell that right. Okay. The other thing that I'm doing here, and this is just a skill when you do outlining, and this is just useful for any sort of informational text, is put a page number there, just so that if you want to go back to it, you know where it is. I just put it in parentheses here, sort of, it's a brief MLA format. So this is good for if you're doing research, you can easily jump back if you need more details from that paragraph, or at least the page that you're going back to. So as I said, we're going to look for a couple specific details that are going to help support that central idea. And one of the things that I noticed right away, and we, just take this in order, right? The Transcontinental Railroad, right? It's a really specific big development in this early 20th century. It brought thousands of settlers to the West. All right, so that's kind of helping me describe, right? If I'm wondering what are these changes, that is a big change, right? Bringing more people to a different part of the U.S. So I'm going to write transcont, and that's just abbreviating transcontinental. And you can totally, for these subpoints here, you can abbreviate, you can be short with it. Don't feel like you have to write complete sentences. Settlers to West. Okay, and West is capitalized because it's the West. It's a proper noun used in this case, so that's why I do it that way. So that's one of the big changes. Okay, are there any other changes that we see here? When I see specifics like these specific cities, that's a really good hint to me when I see that I need to make sure that I'm including those as details as well, but particularly for this quiz. You're going to want to capture those kind of specifics, right? So, and again, I'm going to abbreviate railroad. These are all hubs, right? So hubs are places where, the railroad would pick up cargo or pick up passengers or drop them off. So I'm going to list these specifics: Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago. And what is the effect of that? What is the effect of that? That they're railroad hubs is that they're seeing a lot of industrial growth. Okay, so this is good, and this is a great. This just really quickly gets me it gets me the central idea. It really quickly gives me these details down here. All right, I'm gonna get you guys started. Actually, I'll model completely this second paragraph for you guys as well. So we're going to read through this, try to pick out, again, we're going to look for maybe terms that are sticking out that ideas that seem to come up again and again. So we need to read the whole thing. I need to read the whole thing before I can get an idea of that central idea. The growth of industry caused by the growth of cities as more and more people came looking for work. In the early 19th century, Chicago was an average-sized city. By 1910, the population was more than 2 million, making it the country's second largest city after New York. All the new manufacturing centers grew in similar fashion. However, a very small group of men controlled the vast share of this industry, including the enormously profitable steel, railroad, oil, and meatpacking sectors. This era became known as the Gilded Age and was dominated by captains of industry such as oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller and railroad magnate Cornelius Vanderbilt. All right. So, again, I'm trying, after reading that whole thing, that gives me a better idea, all right, what that central idea is. And another thing, you guys will remember from our talk about the nonfiction text in the ACT is looking earlier in the paragraph, especially like in the first sentence or two, is a good place, for where those informational texts will include the central idea. So topic sentences are important, and they can give huge clues to the central idea. So, cities are growing, right? They're getting bigger, and that seemed to be a focus here, right? Talk about Chicago getting bigger, and manufacturing sort of exploding in those areas as well with these specific industries. So growth in the cities seems to be a big idea there. One thing that seemed to be a big focus of the second half of this paragraph was who that growth was benefiting, though, right? And so we have, specific reference to Rockefeller and Vanderbilt amongst the other tycoons in the Gilded Age. All right, so now in your template, you'll see that it starts with only Roman numeral 1 and an A, but as you hit enter, you can actually proceed to the next. It'll take you to the next Roman numeral, and for me, it's control the back bracket takes me back one level here. So if I'm in the A, B, it'll go back to 2 here. So I'm going to write down the central idea for that second paragraph. In the early 20th century, and again, abbreviating is just fine. Cities grew, and a few men grew very wealthy. All right. So I have some questions about that, right? Which I can answer with those details below, right? Which cities are growing? Who are these men? How are they growing, right? What are those industries? And I can answer those questions in the details below. So we saw reference up here to Chicago, right? So it grows to more than 2 mil by 1910. Okay. Should be grows, present tense. Steel, railroad, oil, meat packing were profitable. All right, so I got those specific industries that were mentioned up here, right? Sort of towards the end of that paragraph. And then, again, those specific people of the Gilded Age, John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, and other tycoons, right, profited the most. All right. So this is sort of for these first 2 paragraphs. This is more than enough to get you guys started with this. You're going to sort of continue in a similar fashion, right? Remember to read the whole paragraph before you get that central idea. Sort of go back in then and get those specific details that can support those central ideas. Once you've finished with this outline, you can, if you have the ability to print it, you can print it, but you can also keep this and the text open, and this should serve as a really quick resource for you to take that quiz, which is also attached to the assignment. All right, that's it for today. Yeah, hope to see a lot of good performance on those quizzes. We'll see you next time.